Peace, peace, peace. I am Dr. Philip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the August 8th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, whatever corner it is located. Also, share, comment, like, do everything that the algorithm likes. Your boy will definitely appreciate it. Also, props to those of you who are watching on whatever streaming service you are paying $14.99 or more a month for. Definitely appreciate you. Again, hit the subscribe button, hit the share, like, comment. I definitely appreciate the comments because I love going back and forth with the people on things that I converse about here. So listen, we got a dope show on tap for you today. We are going to be talking about the Montgomery Riverfront Brawl that took place in Montgomery, Alabama. I was close to the brawl, and you'll learn about that in a few minutes. I wish I would have known the APB would have came out because I would have been on my way from Birmingham to Montgomery. I don't necessarily know if I would have participated, but I would have definitely supplied another chair. Allegedly, I would have allegedly supplied another chair for folk to get it popping over there. We will also be talking about Jamie Foxx's apology to the Jewish community and whether it was necessary, whether it was appropriate for him to apologize. And last but not least, we'll be talking about YouTube and Twitch celebrity Kai Cenat being booked in New York City for quote unquote inciting a riot. But first, I'm going to talk about my experience in Alabama. I went down to Alabama for the 2023 National Association of Black Journalists Convention, which is a multi-day conference for aspiring journalists, journalist education, career development, networking, and just overall innovation. I know a lot of people, folk who I went with, they went to the career fair there and they were offered a job right there on the spot. I know you might be thinking, well, Phil, are you a journalist? What was you doing down there? I thought you was in the social work world. So I consider myself a non-traditional journalist, and I had to get this right when I was down there because you meet so many people. Like, hey, who are you? Who are you with? That was the leading question there. As soon as somebody introduced themselves to you, it's like, hey, who are you with? And I'd be like, well, I'm with myself. I'm not with Fox. I'm not with TMZ. I'm not with CBS, ABC. And literally all of these places were there offering career opportunities to those in attendance. So I'll be like, listen, I'm a non-traditional journalist. I'm a multidisciplinary educator. I'm a professor. I'm a therapist. I'm a podcast host. I'm writing a book. I'm creating a documentary. So I just hit them with all of that. You see how easy it is for me to get that out right now? Because I had to sit and hone that in my hotel room in Birmingham, Alabama, in preparation for that event. So I was down there. It was a dope experience for me. I'm not gonna lie. I felt a little bit out of place because I'm not a traditional journalist. I don't have a background in that area. I don't have quote unquote formal training. So for me to be down there, it was definitely informative. But I'm not gonna lie. It was intimidating as well. I started seeing folk whose work that I followed for some of them a decade or more there. And I'm like, damn, it feel dope to be in your presence. We talking about Roland Martin. We're talking about William C. Roten, who I was able to get a picture with, whose book, $40 Million Slave, which not only compares modern day sports to enslavement in the plantation, but it also goes in depth about reasons why HBCU sports are the way it is in 2023 compared to the 1950s, the 1960s, and early 70s. It informed me about how how college football became integrated, how teams like Alabama became integrated. Why? Because USC came down into Alabama and took a black player. Because Alabama wasn't putting Bear Bryant in them, wasn't putting black folk on the squad. So they came, poached the player out of Alabama, and Bear Bryant was like, "Oh, we gotta get these Negroes. we got to get these. If that's what they doing, we need to be able to stay afloat. We need to stay relevant." So they started poaching a black talent that would typically go to HBCUs and flourish and make it to the NFL or what was it at the time? Was it the AFL during that time as well? To go to these different places, instead they started going to these big institutions, which impacts why HBCU sports are the way it is today. But overall, it was just it was an amazing experience. I left encouraged, inspired that yes, I'm a non-traditional journalist, but I can do this. Why? Because I read, because I think critically, because I'm not afraid to use my voice in spaces and connect with people. I do have an ability just to engage with folks. Those of you who are tuned in, the reason why you're tuned in, because this work that I do resonates with you, and I'm always appreciative for those of you who tune in, especially those of you who subscribe. So wink, wink. But also, I'm trying to think of any other people that I met when I was out there. Vinny Goodwill, who I met a lot of sports people, which even though I don't necessarily watch as much sports as I used to, the people that were there that really whose work I gravitated to just happened to be sports individuals. So like I said, William C. Roden, who worked for ESPN at one time, now he's doing his own thing. Vinny Goodwill, who works for, I believe he works for Yahoo Sports. I learned about him through the Bomani Jones podcast. Those of you who know me know, I'm not going to say I have an infatuation with Bomani Jones, but I love his brain. I love his mind. I love his ability to communicate complex ideas in ways that are easily understood, and it gives me an opportunity to just sit and think. And we know the current conversation when it comes to sports talk in 2023 is not that. We got the Skip Baylesses who just hired Richard Sherman. So it's going to be more yelling. We know about the Stephen A. Smiths and so on, how the sports talk in general has been dumbed down. As I said earlier, Roland Martin, his Black Star Network, which is encouraging me to look at media and platforms and how we can have spaces that really promote this idea of black liberation. We have Black Power Media, but we need more. It's not enough for black folk to go into white spaces. Like, yeah, that's cool if representation is the goal, which for me it's not. For me, it's liberation. So we need spaces where we're able to hone our voices, hone our talents, and speak to us in a way that we understand. And once we get into that Jamie Foxx conversation, you'll further understand why that is so critical. But I just encourage folks to start getting to these places. And you don't even necessarily have to be a journalist. You don't have to be a social worker to go to the National Association of Black Social Work Conferences. If you just want to go and be around black folk who love black folk, I encourage you to go and try to get a grant if you can. Get somebody to underwrite it for you so you ain't got to come out of pocket as much, because why? Those Lyft prices, whoo, baby. Them Lyft prices is nuts. I just let you know, I spent about $75 in one day going from the airport, going to the airport and coming from the airport. Like, listen, I ain't got the Roland Martin bread. You know, I ain't got personal limo service or nothing like that, but definitely something you should all check out. Now, as I said, I was in Birmingham, Alabama. So I was approximately 9 miles away from Hoover, Alabama, where the whole Carly Russell fiasco took place. I didn't see Carly. Hopefully she's doing well. She's doing all right. I'm not sure how far Montgomery is from Birmingham, but I just thought it was just like, what's the odds? What's the odds of me being in Alabama and some racially motivated SHIT pops off? And sure enough, on this past Saturday night, which was August 5th, at the Montgomery Riverfront, there was a brawl. A black man who was just doing his job, a city worker, asking white folk to move their boat so another boat can come in, a bigger boat can come in so it can dock and people could go on their way. He asked them to move. And what we've come to know with white supremacy, whiteness, when you mix alcohol, even though, they say, alcohol, a drunk mind speaks a sober heart, or something like that. Instead of complying, because that's the type of language that we use when we're talking about black folk and the police, right? Why didn't you just comply? Why didn't you just comply? So instead of just complying and following the rules, they decided to physically assault this gentleman, who again was simply doing his job. But lo and behold, the video that I was watching, I heard a sister say, "Somebody help that brother." And that was kind of like the Meteor Man call, because we're not going to use Batman or nothing like that. We know our original superhero for black folk of a certain age was Meteor Man. I ain't know about Black Panther. I didn't know about Green Lantern being black. I ain't know about none of that. But I knew about Robert Townsend. I knew about Meteor Man. I knew about Luther Vandross, Lufa, being a bad guy. I knew about another bad creation, getting a dance on in the film Meteor Man. It's funny, I saw Robert Townsend post that this is the 30-year anniversary of Meteor Man. And if you haven't watched it, I'm not going to say your black card is going to get revoked. But I do think it's worth your while to watch it. You get to see Robert Goulier? Something like that? Robert Guillaume. Yeah, Robert Guillaume. You get to see, oh man, now their name's starting to escape me. You just get to see a whole lot of black celebrities. You get to see Tiny Lister, Zeus, Debo. If you're not familiar with his real name, Tiny Lister. But it's an amazing film. But it seemed like Meteor Man was called, and next thing you know, you just saw black brothers and sisters pulling up, ready for the get down. And what took place after that, y'all saw the video, and I'm gonna say allegedly, because I'm not using my platform to promote black folk getting arrested. I don't know. My eyes might have been deceiving me as I watched that. You know what I mean? When I saw the white boy Crocs up his kneecaps, when I saw somebody allegedly get hit with a chair, went wild like New Jack and ECW, just took the chair, started going wild like Devon Dudley. Allegedly, because again, I think my eyes, because I do have some little cataracts or something like that, where I don't necessarily know if I saw any black folk do anything quote unquote illegal during that time. But if I did, what I saw was unity. What I saw was self-defense. And people were like, well, Phil, how is it self-defense if it's the individual who was getting beaten, if it wasn't him defending himself, but if it was other coming to his rescue? Exactly. Self-defense of community. That's a very real thing. And so it's not necessarily, I wouldn't categorize it as violence, because language is important. I look at that as self-defense by any means necessary. And clearly it was important and necessary for these folk to intervene, because these white folk were not letting up. So I saw unity there. I saw a 16-year-old brother allegedly in the water swimming over. They called him Aquaman. Right. Allegedly. Again, I'm going to keep throwing this allegedly out there, because my eyes was deceiving me. But I saw black folk come together for a common cause, which was to save this black man. It's not lost upon me. We're talking about the what year anniversary is it? Is it the 60th year anniversary of I'm not going to give out false information, but I definitely know it was anniversary, because that was one of the reasons why they had the NABJ down in Birmingham, Alabama. But it's just the irony that this is taking place in Montgomery, Alabama, places where Martin and so many folk of freedom, so many black folk endured similar types of situations in the name of freedom, in the name of liberation. So for me, part of it in allegedly watching, because now I don't even know if I watched it or not. In watching this take place, there was like a sense of unbridled joy. Part of it was due to the unity that I saw. Black folk coming to help one another, especially when the narrative is continues that we're so fragmented. Now, yeah, would you like to see it in other spaces as well? For sure. But I'll take it here. If that means literally saving the life of a black man who was, again, doing what? He was doing his job. But also part of that joy that I was experiencing, that I saw so many of you all experiencing, was a result of just racial animus, this tension that's existed. And it existed pre-45. This racial animus existed pre-45. For black folk, we've endured, we've seen, we've seen Sean Bell, Latasha Harlins. We've seen so many black folk assaulted on camera, George Floyd. We see black folk getting pulled over for no reason, getting followed in stores for no reason other than the color of their skin. And so, yeah, it was a sense of relief, a sense of we got one. We finally got one. This is for what we saw in Florida with the African American history curriculum and all the nonsense that's resulted from that. It's just like, damn, we can't necessarily get you there right now, but we got this. I talk about on my socials about this was a battle, and some folk may look at it as we won. But did we win the war? What is the war? Is it a war against white supremacy? I think when we stop centering white supremacy and stop centering whiteness, and we start focusing on this idea of black liberation, then that's when we truly start winning the war. Video came out, and forgive me for chuckling, of one of the individuals who, and I believe they were all from Selma. I don't have the name of the owner of Vassar's Mini Mart in Selma, who was a participant. But what I saw was there was some white fragility, some victimization. The owner of the Mini Mart in Selma said, "Oh, I was just trying to play peacemaker." But we got video that shows him throwing punches. We saw the video circulating of the white guy, and it may be the same person, with a swollen face, swollen everything. How am I like, damn, it just got real. We saw the memes and the posts that resulted from it with this guy whose video was picked up by TMZ and all of these other places. I saw somebody say, "I'm going to tell my kids that this is Kid Ray." And I chuckle. You got to be a person of a certain age to know who Kid Ray is from Lean On Me. Like, Mr. Clark, they beating up Kid Ray in the hall. Or I'm going to tell my kids this is the Boston Tea Party. So for black folk, this idea of humor, of comedy, it was a way for us to exhale. Heck, I even learned something. I saw one post, and it said, "This is the inventor of the folding chair, Nathaniel Alexander." Now, although that was a bit incorrect because he wasn't the creator of the folding chair, what he did was he patented the folding chair with the bookrest behind it. And this took place in 1911. So if you're in church, if you're in choir, all you do is lift it up, and you can put the book on the back of the chair. But this is important information. I never knew this brother existed. That's why we say Black 365. And yeah, it might seem like, oh, it's humorous, but no, that's pivotal information. I'm never going to forget this. And it comes out of the midst of what? Calamity, of racism. But again, I sit and I think about what happens when the smoke clears. What happens when the memes and the jokes stop? We can't forget that this is where? Montgomery, Alabama, where they've banned abortion rights, where they've attempted to redistrict to disenfranchise black voters. This is the state where Brian Stevenson, and if you're not familiar with Brian Stevenson, he's an attorney. If you may have watched the film Just Mercy, where Michael B. Jordan plays him and Jamie Foxx is in it. Again, we'll talk about Jamie Foxx in a little bit. Where his advocacy work through his equal justice initiative freed more than 100 inmates who had unjust convictions. These black folk who were arrested for these alleged acts, they going up against this system. And so, yeah, I get the memes, I get the jokes. I laughed. But then it becomes sobering when you think about the individuals who the judges, the jurors, that these folk are going to have to come up against. Now, the mayor of Montgomery is a black man, but it's still Alabama. It's still the South. It's still racially segregated. So what's the odds that he's going to get a juror of peers that look like him? If we're talking about the individual who allegedly swung the chair all willy-nilly. What does it look like for them as business owners who were just out to have a good time but found themselves in a predicament where they have to defend themselves and the rights of others that look like them? In that case, I'm not necessarily encouraged. Call me a pessimist. I don't see a positive outcome coming from this by them engaging with the historically racist legal system. Maybe Ben Crump will get involved. Maybe other civil rights attorneys, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, even though he's retired, they'll come down and they'll do what? Stage marches in Montgomery some 60 years later. It's a wild concept when we sit and think about it. I just hope that these individuals find peace because their lives are undeniably changing as a result of the heroic actions that they took. Definitely trying times ahead. With that being said, trying times ahead, we know that Jamie Foxx, comedian, actor, singer, who suffered a stroke within the last several months, who continues to have a long road ahead when it comes to recovery, he now has some added issues that he's going to have to navigate. So over the weekend, the same time period where this Montgomery Brawl took place, Jamie Foxx apologized to the Jewish community after accusations that he posted an anti-Semitic post. Now, what was the post? They killed this dude named Jesus. What do you think they'll do to you? And this is important. Hashtag fake friends. Hashtag fake love. Now, for black folk, and I'll use I statements. For me, when I read that, because I caught the backlash. I didn't see the initial post. I saw the backlash from white folk like Jennifer Aniston. I saw the backlash from folk who identify as Jewish. I saw the backlash from black folk who said this is a anti-Semitic because they said it's common knowledge that folk attribute the death of Jesus to Jewish people. First time I've ever heard that. Why? Because I don't travel in these spaces. I'm not a part of religious studies. I don't have a background in that. I don't have any friends that are Jewish, as far as I know, where we can have these conversations where this might come up. But what I do know is within the black church, when you say they killed this dude named Jesus, we know who is referencing. They is referencing this boy named Judas. We know exactly what it is. And to offer more context, when we see fake friends, that's exactly who he's talking about. And fake love, that's exactly who he's talking about. He's talking about Judas. And so that's where we're talking about these governance structure conversations. And governance structure is understanding amongst black folk in different areas. It's the reason why we could look at somebody and be in the same situation and just look and we automatically know exactly what they're talking about. It's governance structure. And other cultures have that as well, I'm sure. I'm sure the Jewish community have something that they recognize that they don't even have to say words about, that they know what it is. And so for us, when we hear about fake friends and killing Jesus, we automatically ascribe that to who? To Judas. And so he came out and apologized and clarified what many black folk knew all along. And when we talk about this idea of black protectionism, we saw it in the physical form when it came to protecting this brother who was being assaulted, where they were legitimately attempted to murder this black man, 4 to 5 white folk kicking and stomping and punching on the black man. So hopefully again, I don't advocate for the justice system, but if they were charged with attempted murder, I would understand why. Black folk came to the rescue of Jamie Foxx. They came to protect Jamie Foxx and said, hey, nuance matters. Cultural awareness and cultural understanding matters. And this highlights how and why there is no we in America. How we're fragmented. Now I use we just then to highlight the fragmentation that takes place in America. You have different sects. You got black folk, you got Jewish folk who have multiple identities. Jewish folk, you could be Jewish, and then you still can fall under the veil of whiteness. You can still lean in on that, which this is definitely shown in a situation like this. But it highlights this lack of understanding and why there will never be a we. Because even if I was a Jewish individual and this came up, the issue is the accusatory nature that some folk took and ran with, like Jennifer Aniston. Anti-Semitic, which we know in America specifically, because I don't know how they give it up in other places. We know that's a death nail. If you're accused of being anti-Semitic, whether you are or not, that can pretty much be the end of your career. And I'll get into that and how I think that influenced Jamie Foxx's apology. But instead of being accusatory, this could have been an opportunity to ask for additional information. Well, what you mean by this, family? Well, you know what? Talking about how Judas betrayed Jesus, which in his apology he highlighted, talking about a friend of his who he recognized wasn't a real friend. And potentially this Jewish individual, the Jewish community could have been like, oh, okay. Because you know what? When we hear this, this is what comes up for us, which is how we've been attributed as being the murderers of Jesus. A teachable moment, a conversation that takes place between two groups. For what? For better understanding. But that's just not the space that we operate from. Again, I'm using we just for because I don't feel like finding another word. That's not a space that we operate from here in America. And dare I say abroad. I sat and thought about as to whether Jamie Foxx should have apologized. Now, I understand why he apologized. Because he's where? He's in what? He's in Hollywood. And I just said it could be a death sentence for your career if you attempt to double down in any way. But I also thought this was room for that apology. Some people call it a fake apology. Where it's, I'm sorry you took that way. Right? Because that's not necessarily accountability. I don't think he needed to take accountability in this situation for anything. But this was an opportunity for, well, I'm sorry you misunderstood it. I apologize that you took it wrong. And then went on to say, because this is what I meant. I thought that would have been completely appropriate in this situation. But we know the power of that certain communities have. And we don't gotta, and I know some folk might feel you're going to get canceled for this. Well, I don't believe in cancel culture. I'm going to be where I need to be. But I can't help and look with my own two eyes as to what happens when certain communities are disrespected, or there's belief that a certain community was disrespected in comparison to other communities. Because hell, Bill Maher still got a job on HBO, correct? When he said the N-word in jest. So we recognize that the rules ain't the same. And it doesn't make you anti-Semitic for pointing that out. It's just highlighting certain truisms that exist under the auspices of white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism. It's the game. It's the game. Now, speaking of games, Kai Cenat. Truth be told, I had no idea who Kai Cenat was. Now, hopefully I'm saying his name right. Kai Cenat, Kai Cenat. You can spell it phonetically for me in the comments. He is a 21-year-old Twitch and YouTube star. He's amassed over 10 million subscribers across platforms. Do not ask me what he does. I don't know if he's a gamer. I don't know if he just talks SHIT across his platforms. I don't know. But I know he's extremely influential. Dare I say powerful. And his power was seen in New York City in Times Square as he announced a giveaway of PlayStation 5s, gift cards, and other items to his fans who would come out. Now, it wasn't just 20 people who came out. Remember, I said he has over 10 million subscribers, probably worldwide. It wasn't 100. What LeBron say? Not one, not two, not three. Thousands of people came out for this event. Subsequently, he was arrested and charged with inciting a riot as a result of this giveaway, his attempt to do good. Now, sure, part of it was probably for attention because we're in a attention-seeking era in life. But in the midst of seeking attention, he tried to do something well, offer some joy, offer some entertainment for individuals who supported him along his journey. He was arrested because they said he incited a riot. He caused traffic delays. There were some instances of violence that took place. Now, subsequently, the only violence that I saw was the NYPD gripping people up. It was akin to what I saw in videos from the George Floyd protest. Just the physicality related to it. Now, more than some 60 some odd people were arrested. Kai Cenat being one of them. For me, it read as persecution of another black boy. I'll call him a black young adult. Someone attempting to do something good. But we recognize that we're in this era of law and order. We've always been in an era of law and order here in America. When we go back to those catchers who would try to wrangle up enslaved folks, who sought freedom. This is just an extension of that. They said he didn't have the proper permits. Think about it. Just think about where we are in society. This struggle, this power struggle that continues to exist, keeping folk in line. Again, this idea of law and order. And you better toe the line, in my Jerry Jones voice. And so he got caught up in it. Now don't get me wrong. Was it malicious, this act of his? No, I don't believe so. Was it irresponsible? Probably. This probably was irresponsible. If you recognize you have 10 million subscribers, you got to anticipate. You and your team have to anticipate that you're going to get more than 10 people that's going to come out, more than 100 people that's going to come out. I think that's what you're banking on. You're banking on having folk come out to show you love, so then you could put it on your feed, and so you could continue to grow your brand, because that's where we are in society. We have to grow our individual brands. Sometimes at the expense of the collective. I don't think this was at the expense of the collective, though. Instead of the NYPD coming out and saying, okay, we have this situation taking place, how can we support him in this endeavor, even though we didn't know about it? How can we support this to make this run orderly, run smoothly, have a conversation afterwards? Because that's not what this is. It's all about consequences. It's all about judgment. It's all about violence and harm. They have to justify these multiple billions of dollars that they're receiving. By keeping what? By keeping law and order. So no, I don't think it warranted arrest. But what I did think about as I get ready to wrap up, I started thinking about how this 21-year-old black boy, and I started thinking about Tupac and at the end of Kendrick Lamar's Mortal Man. And he says at the age of 30, it's like they take the heart and soul out of a black man. And I'm sure in 2023 it'll be black person, our non-binary folk, our black women. Because why? You have jobs, you have families, you have to lose. Hence the reason why Jamie Foxx apologized. You got ish to lose. But at 21, when you got energy, like Tupac said, when you still want to lift weights, I sat and wondered, why wouldn't a Jesse Jackson, a Al Sharpton hit up a Kai Cenat, try to have a conversation with him, hopefully inform his and help hone his sensibilities when it comes to this idea of black liberation? Because if at the drop of a dime, you could have people come, thousands of people come out for PlayStation 5s and gift cards, what could you do on this quest for black liberation? What can you do for voting? What can you do in the movement, in the struggle? Because this is the next generation. Like, I'm about to be 40. It's important for me to be looking at and encouraging the generation that's beneath me and the generation that's beneath them. Equipping them with the skills. It's why I teach. It's to equip them with the skills to think critically. Because liberation probably not going to be seen in my lifetime. But with more folk like Casanat, it could potentially be a reality. Or you know what? Maybe it's just a dream. Listen, I appreciate you all for tuning in. Again, if you're listening on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment, do all that jazz. If you're listening on a streaming service, do the same. Until next time, peace.